been producing this body of work for?
Some of them were started 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd say 2 years. Just to create space, and just that space when I was painting was, the experience of feeling that space when I was painting myself. So there was a certain freedom that I was looking for when I was painting. Just where there was no thought when I was painting, and that image was a surprise
Right.
to me when I'd completed it. It was just a bit of a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a calming process for you?
Yeah, very calming. Yeah.
So almost like a meditative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, each one of these, was one of those sittings. Or a few sittings, day after day, especially for the bigger ones. Because they're layered. You'd sit with one layer, and then you'd go back and you'd do another layer, and you'd sit back and do another layer. So just spending days with one particular palette, and then the sequences of you see these 3 red pieces here. They're sequences of the same palette.
Mm-hmm.
So they represent each other, and that was really interesting to have a look at the colours and really engross myself in the way that they shifted in and out of each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you didn't have a purpose for the day. You were just.
No, I never ever. The only thing that dictates whether the painting is a success or not is if I have no objective whatsoever, and that's what I mean by freedom. So if the colour, and if I'm painting, and if the painting is an original experience that I haven't manufactured out of trying to obtain an image or have an objective for the piece, then I feel it's succeeded because it's just come out of somewhere really vacant, and that's really what I wanted for the space when I was looking to do this room, because that's what I love about exhibitions, is that you can, when it's a solo, you can create a room rather than a single piece. And so the room, the only objective I have was to create a meditative space where people could possibly feel what I was feeling when I was painting it, and that was a sense of calm and a sense of peace and a sense of recognition.
Was this a new process for you?
No, a long developed process ever since I was a real little child.
Right.
Yeah. So I, grew up on a big farm out in Gippsland, and I would walk for, all day by myself in these big yellow fields, and that was where the creative process began, because I felt really akin to that sense of space and that sense of kinship with where I was in that moment, and so it developed from there, and then adolescence and womanhood and parenthood, and all the time I realised about 7 years ago that what I was really searching for in my paintings was to return to be that child, and to condense what I'd experienced in a way that wasn't a forgetting, but to then remember what it was like to be a child, and to have the freedom of that mind before the world poured in, So these are that little girl, I think, reliving through me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
Mm.
That innocence, but it's also, they're deep.
Mm. I think I've been really deep ever since I was a little girl. I think I was, before I painted, I was doing poetry, and before I was doing poetry, I was feeling poetry.
Okay.
And just that kinship with my surroundings and that magic, you know, the magic of watching the grass move and feeling it so deep to the core of myself, you know, how things around me were moving, and that just provoked an internal love for that space. And I just, you know, yeah, that's I loved it. And I think instead of, you know, I think my childhood was, you know, a farm and growing up with, you know, Rosepot the pig and the chickens and just the long vacant acres. And it was really flat, and the roof of the sky was round and blue. And so you were looking at yellow and blue all the time with no interruption of any periphery. And I think that, yeah, that's really... That changed my life, you know. That was the change of where I always wanted to be, and what I thought was my, I don't know, favourite place to go.
You talked about colours, about how it influences your subconscious, and how that in your early years it was something you took notice of. When you first start these paintings, I know I asked you for the red so that we could maybe replicate that on the gallery wall, but you said, no, I don't have it because I just would think of it and I'd produce it on the day. Are these your moods for the day? Or your sittings, you know, like through the different colours? Or
Yeah, I think so, because I don't, like, I'll just be a little bit more, you know, I'll feel a little bit more like, oh, I want red, or I want blue, or I want green, or I want a black, you know, where, you know, the blacks are the blue and the red combined. Yeah, that's about it. That's about the only choice I make is the what colour I pick. And I often pick the same colour, like, you know, maybe three or, you know, maybe three colours, and then because I use cloth, once you wipe back the paint against the canvas, the paint is coming alive in all its multiplicities. You know, the one palette can obviously change when you combine colours, but one particular colour can change just by thin layers, you know, and applying really thin layers to the canvas over and over and over again. That's one of my favourite things to do, is just sit and watch how one colour will change. It
evolves just from the beginning through. Are you using the same cloth through, or are you switching? And
I switch once, if, you know, because I don't want to muddy my palette or anything like that, so I stay true to the colour once, especially if I'm, you know, painting a black and I'm using blues and reds to do that, it'll get to a certain point on the cloth where, you know, you can't light in it. So I'll change my cloth. Yeah. And often I keep, you know, during a painting, I'll keep, because the palettes are so spontaneous, I'll keep them with me so that then I can see these real subtle shades, and then I'll go back, pick one up again and reuse it, you know, through it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really, I love the process of painting, and it's been a full circle for me. I used to paint quite thick layers, and then I felt really unsatisfied with what I was producing. I didn't feel connected to it. I knew I was still searching for something in the paint. And so what I did, one day I woke up and I always wear long skirts. I like the weight, and I like feeling the weight closer to the earth, I think. So I always wear real heavy sort of skirts. And I ran up, and it was about 3 a.m, and I picked up the wrong palette because the lights were so bad. So I picked up red instead of blue, and I applied my paint directly on the canvas and started wiping it, and realised I'd done the exact wrong colour. So then I picked up my skirt and started rubbing it off. And that's when, you know, that sort of miracle happened, where I realised that I wanted to paint with cloth. Right. Because, this instead of painting layers and having something come out at you, suddenly with the cloth I was painting backwards, and the paint itself was revealing itself to me.
Okay.
And that gave me that deepened my sense of awe about the medium that I was using, and also brought me closer to my objective in where I wanted to go with my painting, because I was washing away, and so I like my periphery to be clear. I like my thoughts to be clear, and I like my paintings to be clear. Yeah. I love the idea of holding the space between the canvas and the viewer. I'm a viewer as well. You're a viewer. Other people will be a viewer. But there's the third thing. So there's the canvas, the person, and then the third space, which is, the space between. And I love watching that painting, for example, the red one with the one red stripe. That looks, you can see how multiplicitous that is with its layering, but as the daylight changes in subtle ways, that will completely disappear, and all you'll see is the red stripe.
Yeah, wow.
And it changes. It's like a clock of the day, and they're so sensitive to the outside space, which is beautiful to see. They change all the time. I think people are completely free to respond how they would like to, and that's the only thing that I would like to see, is that people have their own experience with them, and I hope that they're vacant enough that they invite people to see themselves within the work and to have their own intimacy with each piece, just as if they painted it themselves. And certainly some people don't like expressionism, and will. There'll be a rebellion in them, and that's fascinating also. And I really like people just having a say. Yeah, I said this on radio the other day, but I did an exhibition about 5 years ago that was pure black pieces, and I use one colour. So now when I'm painting black, I use multiple colours to create that black, but back then I just chose one tube of paint to do the whole exhibition, and I wiped back the black into the white of the canvas, and it created this really dynamic shade change, and the whole thing was black and white, was devoted to my favourite poet, who is a Zen Buddhist from the 1800s. He's a beautiful poet, and he was so inspiring, his works, and they've been such a refuge for me. I devoted the whole exhibition to him, and I was painting a big commission at the time behind a wall, so nobody could see me, but I could hear the gallery. And, one lady walked down the stairs, and then there was this great silence, and I heard this crying, this real beautiful, soft crying, and I was behind the wall, and I was so touched that someone was moved like that about my work. So I cried as well, And then later in the afternoon, this woman came down the stairs, and she walked into the middle of the room, and the same silence as she looked around the room for the first, 10 seconds. And then she yelled at the top of her voice, "I hate it, I hate it." And she was so... she was struck, you know what I mean? And she did not like the pain, but it was so fantastic. And I was so, I loved her response, because without me in the room, she could just be authentic and say that this just does not sit with me. This doesn't feel right for me. And I really thought it was fabulous, that the only thing that you don't want as an artist, probably universally, is that you don't want people to walk past it and think nothing. If they're having a response, whether it's a negative or positive or in between, somewhere between that, it's you've done your job, because your job as an artist is to move yourself and to move other people.